Federal government inaugurates automobile assembly plant in Niue. Foreign capital federal government unveils initiative to boost inflows. The Debt Management Office DMO says 150 billion naira federal government bonds on offer, plus Central Bank of Nigeria CBN to partner universities on entrepreneurial development. On this episode of Business Express, we shall be taking a look at how a robust tax system can stimulate post-pandemic economic growth in Nigeria. Details of these and more on Business Express on the network service of the NTA, and we are reaching you live from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I'm Leah Katun Babatunde. A very good morning to you. The federal government has directed that all vehicles to be purchased under the approved federal government budget should be procured locally from local assembly manufacturers to encourage the growth of the Nigeria automotive industry. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, stated these during the inauguration of automobile assembly plants in Niue, Anambra State. Ndem Kalu has details.
The minister, who was in company of the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Utumba Adebayo, were conducted around the facilities to get first-hand information on what is being manufactured locally in the automotive industry. The minister commended President Muhammadu Buhari for consistently encouraging and supporting local manufacturing in Nigeria to assist in creating jobs and boosting the growth of the economy. She added that the ministry has put in place a vehicle registration portal to ensure that all vehicles imported or manufactured locally is captured in a central database in order to curtail smuggling and leakages in government revenue.
In response to the outcry from local automobile assemblers on the fiscal policy measures of the industry, Mr. President had directed a review of the policy to ensure greater output in the sector. This is in line with Nigeria's philosophy to harness optimally the benefits of the regional integration under the ECOWAS as well as the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AFCFTA.
The commissioning of this plant further underscores the focus of the management of military vehicles towards supporting the federal government's industrialization agenda, job creation aspirations, and campaign for local content development.
Governor Willie Obiano, represented by his deputy, pledged more support from the federal government in the area of local manufacturing.
This great company has demonstrated immense faith in the Nigerian economy and deserves every support it can get from all of us.
The event attracted stakeholders in the manufacturing industries.
And the Central Bank of Nigeria CBN says it is developing a tertiary institutions entrepreneurship scheme ties to reorientate, train and finance entrepreneurship ideas by Nigerian graduates. The CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele stated that the scheme is designed to support the development of entrepreneurial mindset and culture through the introduction of a platform that provides seamless access to affordable finance by graduates, with an estimated 600,000 graduates from different tertiary institutions entering the labor market annually after participating in the National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) program seeking the already thinned out white-collar jobs. The CBN governor added that the program will also assist in creating employment for many youth graduating from various institutions of higher learning in the country annually. The federal government says it is committed to improving the inflow of foreign capital into the country. The Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Mariam Katagum, who stated this, pointed out that capital inflows dipped by 60% in 2020 from $24 billion in 2019 to $9.7 billion. The minister reiterated that government remains determined towards addressing the enormous challenges faced by stakeholders in agri-commodity value chain in particular. She added that this is why the government launched Nigeria Agribusiness and Agro-Industry Development Initiative to, among other things, rein in the high cost of production, low quality of products and issues around capacity utilization in the subsector. Nigeria has generated 1 trillion naira over the years from 234 concluded transactions of previously government-owned enterprises across sectors of the economy. Director General of the Bureau of Public Enterprise, Alex Oko, stated that the Bureau this year aims to generate about $500 million naira net revenue from various transactions as approved by the National Council on Privatization.
It's a cash flow problem. It's a liquidity problem, right? Because government is sovereign and it owns assets, across the federation. But these assets are suboptimal in terms of their usage, right? So we want to be able to optimize these assets, unlock liquidity from them, and use the liquidity to drive various fiscal plans of the government, budgetary support, or provision of other, types of facilities and assets.
The basis for privatization was to generate revenue for government, reduce operational inefficiencies, revitalize and optimize public sector entities, and increase investment levels as a catalyst for growth with an increasing constrained fiscal space. Oko said current privatization initiatives are poised to impact the economy positively. Nigeria's Debt Management Office (DMO) says it has put 150 billion naira bonds on offer for subscription for the month of July. The offer comes in 3 tranches of 50 billion naira each, with the first being a 10-year reopening bond to be offered at the rate of 13.98% with a maturity date of February 2028. The second tranche of 50 billion naira with a 12.4% rate has March 2036, the 20 years as maturity, while the third tranche comes with 12.98% interest, a 30-year reopening, and has March 2050 maturity. The dollar found support on Tuesday ahead of U.S. inflation data, with investors on edge over whether the figures may offer clues about the likely timing and tapering and interest rate hikes. Millions of Nigerians experience the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic and have their own perspectives of the virus and its attendant consequences. Boste Abel met with a tomato seller in the popular orange market in Mararaba, Gurku, Nasarawa State, and here is the story.
Surviving COVID-19 series is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
In Nigeria, the COVID-19 pandemic had substantial effects on the livelihood of people, but smallholder vegetable sellers were more affected because of the perishable nature of vegetables. Umar Abdullah is a tomato farmer and seller who has been in the business for 40 years now.
I live from Maraba, Orange Market. I dey sell tomatoes. So their price not dey steady, not be provision market for tomatoes. I train my children for this market. Okay. My children, and then they for school now. Which school? Then they for poly. Some many don't finish secondary school and not get money to continue go to poly. But I get the one I train for market here. They say that they start that business, tomato business. Now, thank God.
The lockdown disrupted sales that had impeded vegetable farmers' access to markets, thus limiting their productive and sales capacity.
From yesterday to today, in less morning market, that one I lost. I never read the gain what I get for tomatoes.
The price of yield also dropped by more than half, resulting in huge loss of the commodity.
I need to government to come to help funds, but see the place, no flow. I need to show if you government help funds, you come renter. I like her. We call we for sons. Son the finisher, the tomatoes.
With the threat of the deadly Delta COVID-19 pandemic, traders and business owners in Nigeria are leaving no stone unturned as experience learnt in previous hits become handy. Boss Today Able, Business Express.
As Nigeria tries to build back better after the COVID-19 crisis, the approach to revenue mobilization should be more strategic, and for this reason, analysts in the nation's economy are advising the federal government to embark on fundamental reforms in the nation's tax system that will implement effective tax policies in attracting investments, boost revenue collections and administration to stimulate post-pandemic investment and economic growth. Now, to speak to these issues is the Executive Secretary at West African Tax Administration Forum, WATAF, Babatunde Oladapo. You're welcome to Business Express.
Thank you for having me.
I guess we'll be having a family meeting since we share the same name.
Exactly.
So, with projected budget deficits, of course, huge borrowings, rising debts, and of course import bills, everything just on the high side. Now, how do you see the current tax regime we're running helping to keep the economy afloat and preventing us from falling down into the negative territory again?
Okay, I think the first thing is to put things in proper perspective. The situation is there. There's no argument about that.
True.
And this calls for caution in terms of the approach we are taking. There shouldn't be panic. Government has to sit back and look at the options. Tax revenue is about the only sustainable means of getting money for government to fund development. So it's about time government sit back and look at the tax structure, particularly the issue of tax administration. What can we do to make the tax administration, both at the federal and state level, to be more responsive in terms of meeting the need of providing the shortfall? And I think there have been some traditional problems encountered by tax administration. One of the key issues is the issue of capacity building, helping the tax administration to build capacity. If you notice during the pandemic, there was something came up that was already growing. The digital economy came to fore, and that's an aspect of the economy that Nigeria as a country has to be prepared to tax effectively. I know the tax administration has been doing one or two things to bridge the gap, but government support has to go in terms of helping them to build the capacity. Then in terms of providing the political will which has started a couple of years ago when you look at the Finance Act, which has really helped tax administration at the federal level to be able to change the laws, to be able to collect taxes where necessary. There has to be more in terms of providing that support to tax administration.
Okay, let me just come in here. Of course, we saw some reductions that came last year in terms of taxation. That is because COVID came, and so, of course, some of the initiatives put in place had to just be put on hold or some form of break. But now we're having concerns that we might have just been walking into a third wave of the virus. Do you see this affecting our tax system?
Yeah, both ways. The way I look at things is every situation provides opportunity to learn and to grow. So this is time for us to rethink. There are some things we've taken for granted in this part of the world. But majorly oil has been at the driver's seat of government revenue. And with what we've been seeing, it's not sustainable because it's beyond the control and it's also volatile. So this is about time that, yes, the pandemic is a wake-up call. There are going to be some losses, but on the long term, government can actually benefit. And I think one of the things that has to come to the fore is addressing the issue of how do we tax, who do we tax, who pays the taxes. When you look at what obtains not only in Nigeria developing economy, in OECD countries, the issue of taxation, where they get the bulk of their tax revenue, tends to individuals, taxing wealth of individuals, taxing income. But on this side, is more taxing the corporate individuals. When you look at the landscape, you see a situation of 20% providing the 80% of taxes that comes in. A lot of wealthy individuals are just swinging their arms free in this part of the world, finding a way to evade taxes. So I think the issue of equity has to come in. If you follow the news, Oxfam published a publication on reducing inequality. It's appalling to see that less than 20% controls the wealth of, and those guys are not paying as much as they should, because that's the idea behind taxation. When you have more, you should be able to pay more. So I think government will have to rethink in terms of areas that has not been sufficiently taxed other than corporate taxes. We should be talking about wealth taxes. We should be talking about some other forms of taxes that would discourage pollution, for instance. We should be talking about property taxes, which are not really be effectively done. You see big houses, which is a pointer to the fact that someone who built that kind of house should have some money to pay back to government. So those are the new areas we have to start thinking and putting pressure on those areas so that government can be able to recover on the long term from the shock of the COVID-19.
Okay, now still looking at the tax system, you've pointed out some very, very disturbing issues, like 20% of the people funding the tax system, and so we found ourselves in a situation where our tax ratio to GDP is extremely low. These are concerns being raised by the World Bank, raised by the IMF, and also every other development partners. Now, what do you see happening in the short and the long run to drag these people who aren't paying taxes and to build up the ratio?
Yeah, I think one of the things, I'm a taxman, and I think one of the perennial complaints of the taxman is access to reliable data. Taxation thrives on unavailable data. If you don't have the right kind of data that will help you to track who has what, who spends what, it's going to be difficult. I think one of the approaches has to be, on the side of tax administration, pay more attention to how you gather taxes, data, how you analyze and store them.
So who is responsible for this data?
Yeah, the data comes from different areas because, for instance, if a corporate does banking, does transactions, so you have the data you get from the banking system, the data you get through the government agencies, and the data you get from other business concerns that they patronize. So it has to be a whole of government approach in terms of putting the basic framework that will enable the taxman to be able to get data that can be used for the purposes of getting tax at the needed taxes. And then in terms of technology, now technology is the in thing, and businesses have gone virtual. They experienced COVID-19. You could transact businesses. There are multinationals who are transacting businesses here who are not residents, but they are making money from Nigeria. So the tax administration has to be adequately supported to be able to get technology that will enable them to track those transactions and be able to get the fair share of taxes for the Nigerian economy. And beyond that, government also, currently there's a talk around the taxation of the digital economy. The OECD is leading that talk, and a couple of rules have been rolled out, which is just testing the water. And Nigeria demonstrated some kind of, because Nigeria refused to sign the inclusive framework, which is a good one, that it's not hot papers that you sign. And so I think the Nigerian government has some reservation in terms of the breadth of the recommendation. So those are the kind of things we want to see going forward, because because the multinational out there, they are always, capitalism is about making as much money as you can. So, and you will never expect multinationals or wealthy individuals to come and say, this is all I have. You have to do all you can to be able to get what you want from them. So that's the side that government has to put in place, the political will, the support for tax administration, and of course, most importantly, deterrence in terms of the penal system. If someone doesn't pay his fair share of taxes, what happens? It shouldn't be a case of a slap on the wrist and the fellow keeps evading taxes.
Okay, I must sincerely thank you, Mr. Babatunde Oladapo, for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Great, and so we move straight to the commodities market. And of course, Nigerian stocks off to a negative start of the week, and Asia Pacific stocks away from home edged higher as investors await China's trade data for June. Boss Day Abel has been looking at the global stock market.
Shares in Asia Pacific were mostly higher in Tuesday trade as investors reacted to the release of Chinese trade data for June. Hong Kong Hang Seng Index led gains regionally as it jumped 1.73%. In mainland China, the Shanghai Composite rose 0.45%, while Nikkei of Japan added 0.52%. European stocks are expected to struggle for direction at the open on Tuesday, ahead of earnings report from several big banks in the U.S. London FTSE is seen opening 5 points lower at 7,125.42. Germany's DAX and CAC 40 of France are still maintaining previous figures this morning. European investors will be looking stateside on Tuesday, ahead of the second quarter earnings season for banks, which kicks off Tuesday. U.S. stock futures were mostly flat in overnight trade after the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose to almost 35,000 ahead of the second quarter earnings season for banks, which kick off Tuesday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average futures fell 10 points or 0.03%. The S&P 500 futures fell 0.06% and the Nasdaq 100 also dipped 0.002%. In Africa, South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 opened positive. Namibia's overall index was negative, while other markets like the Nairobi's All Share, Tunisia's Tunidex, and Ghana's GSA Composite are still maintaining previous figures. Boss said they able. Business Express.
And this is where we end this edition of the program. We value feedback, so keep the comments, observations, and suggestions coming. Be informed that all previous episodes are available on YouTube on the NTS channel. Business Express returns Wednesday at 3 p.m. I'm Leah Kating Babatunde, saying be safe out there and God bless Nigeria.